Hello everyone, this is Loco S, and welcome to Invictus Day 7. This is going to be basically the wrap-up day for Invictus on the show floor here at Bevic Convention Center. After today, the show will move over to DefenseCon, which is at the spaceport, believe it or not. The Drake Interplanetary is not invited to Invictus, so Drake Interplanetary usually just has their own little sideshow titled DefenseCon at the local spaceport most days. Also, I must apologize, unfortunately, for day 5, which is Anvil Day, for arriving pretty late on the upload schedule. Unfortunately, Anvil Day crashed basically left and right for me, where it's a very large show, lots of ships, and the game and Star Citizen isn't in its most stable form right now. It's crashing quite frequently, at least with ARGO Day. Sorry, not ARGO Day, with Anvil Day. Hopefully today, including with ARGO as an included ship manufacturer, runs a little bit smoother, and thankfully it should hopefully be a shorter day because there's actually a whole lot less ships on the show floor, but we have a whole crap ton of concepts to go over first, so let's knock these out of the way. Starting with this beauty in front of me, this is the ARGO SRV. Basically, this is Star Citizen's tow tractor. And tractor, yeah, well, it's tow tractor, tugboat, however you want to view it. This is basically a ship that is very much focused on using a tractor beam located at the back here to maneuver cargo, like large cargo boxes, ground vehicles, ships, large chunks of salvage. It's basically, its objective is to get large, unwieldy objects from point A to point B. Definitely a support ship. I do believe, I would imagine that you would easily be able to find gameplay and contracts with this ship, even as an independent contractor, helping people with larger ships escape atmosphere, getting their ship out of a dangerous area, loading and unloading large cargo, all that kind of sort of fun stuff. So it's definitely a ship that I wouldn't necessarily consider getting it right now, because, like I always say, with concept ships, you're not going to always get a ship that you want to play with right now with a concept ship. But tractor beam tech should be in, and this is possibly a concept that's going to be in sooner rather than later, so it's not quite a bad idea if you do decide to pick one up. Just make sure you have other ships that you want to play with in the meantime. Going on to RSI, and oh boy does RSI have a lot of ships in the concept pipeline, and do not expect any of these soon because they are all huge. Starting off here, we have the very much fan favorite and very much well-demanded RSI Polaris. RSI Polaris is basically a torpedo. It's an interesting boat, interesting ship. It's kind of like a destroyer. I would view it more in naval terms as a destroyer escort, sort of, or a frigate. But it's not really classified as such in the game. It's classified as a corvette. It has a couple of these defensive turrets for fending off fighter-sized targets, but its main armament is torpedoes, and I will always give the disclaimer: torpedoes and missile gameplay. You are very much at the whim of the netcode gods and what Star Citizen has currently in terms of its flight mechanics for missiles. They can either be wonderful or they can be terrible. Hopefully they get that sorted out in the near future for the Polaris. Otherwise, it will be struggle bus time for the Polaris. Other than that, the Polaris does have a single hangar for a single ship. Now, as much as people say they want to use this as a ship, therefore, for their fleets and orgs, a single hangar carrying a single ship isn't really going to do much for fleet-sized engagements. You'd much rather bring along a Starfarer and use it as basically a KC-130 style operation where you have a whole bunch of fighter aircraft following and escorting this tanker into the combat area, and then once you're in the combat area, the tanker peels off, and then the fighters go in. So, definitely a ship that is very much loved by the community, but I don't know how soon it's going to be. I think it might be on their progress tracker right now, but CIG has put things in the progress tracker for attempting for a decent length of time, and then they take them off without releasing the ship, so don't hold your hopes up, especially because, like I said, it's a larger ship. Another larger ship that I wouldn't hope for is the RSI Perseus. Now, between the Perseus and the Polaris that we just got, the Perseus would be something I would slightly more recommend, mainly because instead of using torpedoes, it uses guns. So you have these two large turrets up here, with one up. Sorry, you have two large turrets. One's up here, one's down below. So you have really good field of fire for your two very much ship-killing turrets up there. You do have two point defense turrets for engaging fighter-sized targets and torpedoes. So that's to your benefit. But other than that, there really isn't much more to the ship. I do believe there's a small cargo bay for storing ammunition and supplies. So it is a interesting ship in that regard. It's very much a combat-focused ship, but you don't have the fighter bay for transporting fighters. And the other thing about this ship is, and it's what I think is actually really useful, is like unlike the Polaris, you only this can be run with only a crew of, I believe, 4 players. So this is very much a good. I would recommend this ship for if you want a large capital ship to fight other larger ships. I would take the Perseus over the Polaris, mainly because you have lower crew requirements. You're using guns instead of torpedoes, which can be spoofed and can do weird things if the netcode isn't behaving with you. And in general, it's just a, like I said, a leaner ship with 4 players. The guns are more reliable. It's just going to be a better time all around for you to use this ship. And but like also, before I go on to the Tumbril series here, should also put out the warning again. It's a very large ship, so don't expect it in-game anytime soon. Tumbril here has a concept that I actually have bought and I've been waiting eagerly for. The Tumbril Ranger series. There are several variants. There is I believe there's a TR, which is a one that has more offensive firepower. Then you have like a recon variant, and then you have I believe a racing variant. Really, it's a cool idea. It's a really cheap concept. You can always pick it up and enjoy the having a dirt bike. However, it's a very weird spot. Nothing should technically be holding back the Tumbril Cyclone series, not the Cyclone, the Ranger series, but for whatever reason, I believe CIG is holding off until we get a reworking of ground vehicle physics before they release the Ranger series. So, cool idea. It's a very compact, single seat ground vehicle. And while ground vehicles aren't super useful now, they may be in the future, and buying a relatively cheap ground vehicle might not be a bad idea for your fleet addition. However, as cheap as they are on the Pledge Store, these are also really cheap and quick. These types of vehicles, rather, we don't know what the final in-game price for this is, but these types of vehicles in-game tend to also be fairly cheap. So I wouldn't worry too much about picking up one of these over a ship that's flyable in-game that you can use right now to eventually earn the money to buy one of these in-game when it comes out. But if you have a couple of ships and you want a small dirt bike that should be able to be fit into most land vehicle or most spaceships, Tumbril Ranger, not a bad choice. Next up, we have the concept sail that went live today, which is the Tumbril Storm. Tumbril Storm is a light tank, and it's definitely, I want to say, almost Cyclone-sized, so you can definitely have these over a Nova and be more effective, I believe. Mainly because with a Nova, yes, it's very powerful, but it's also very large. I believe the only it shares a very similar problem with the Atlas platform that Anvil uses. You have the Ballista, the Centurion, and the Spartan. That's basically Anvil's APC platform and like versatile ground vehicle platform, where the Nova, like that, is so huge it can only be carried by basically one ship. So having a Tumbril Storm instead allows you to take this more compact vehicle and fit it into a couple more ships beyond a C8. So you're not limited to just having one ship that you have to get in order to use it. So a bit more compact, so that's good for transportation. It's also more agile, and it's a single seat craft, so you don't have to worry about crew. So I would say, believe it or not, this is the only, one of the very few concepts I would recommend getting if you're torn between a Tumbril Nova and a Nova Storm. I would pick up the Storm over the Nova because of the Nova's increased crew requirement and size. The Tumbril Storm is going to be more logistically friendly for you to actually deploy and get into the field and use. Plus, with its armor and shield and its laser cannon, it's going to be basically effective against everything that the Tumbril Nova will be effective against, except the Tumbril Nova. So the only thing that this is going to have trouble with is actually fighting Novas, and you might not normally see a lot of Novas out in the field. I rarely see people deploy Novas, so it's not like you're going to struggle in that regard. So I would say if you're thinking about getting a tank in game, I would pick up the believe it or not, I would actually pick up the Storm over the Nova. Obviously, the other thing I would say is that yes, we don't know what's going really on with concept ships, but they did also in the Inside Star Citizen today actively did speak that they were actually actively talking that this ship is in active development and it is in the gray box phase. So you can have a little bit of hope that because they put this ship as a concept when it was in gray box, you actually might see this ship this year. You might see this tank rather this year. So you can have a little bit more hope that this is a concept that will be in your hands relatively soon. But don't be angry if it takes them a year or two because they decide, oh, there's this other. If they get basically CIG gets basically ship ADHD and decides oh, there's this other ship we need to work on, and just zooms off to that and abandons this. So give a little bit more hope that this is going to be released sometime soon in terms of concepts, but don't hold your breath. And lastly, for another ground vehicle concept that seemingly should be in game but isn't, we have the Origin. I believe it's the, let me see here, G12A, and this is basically a military version of Origin's luxury ground jeep. Really want to recommend getting it. It's always been sort of an odd duck of a vehicle. We already have a vehicle very similar to it that's a bit more, I believe, more capable, and that's the Tumbril Cyclone series. I mean, it looks fancy, it looks fun, but I mean, unless you're an Origin fanboy, I really want to pick this up. So, onto those more capable ground vehicles that I just recommended, the Tumbril Cyclone series. Here they all are nice and lined up in a row. I actually have quite a few of these, mainly because they're all individually unique, and they actually eventually will have more roles filled out for them. But they're also, the main reason I got a whole bunch of them is these are relatively compact ground vehicles that can use more than one, that can transport more than one person, and can actually have a little bit of firepower attached to them. So, the RN is the Recon variant. Recon mechanics aren't really in game yet, so this isn't really super useful at the moment. So you can skip that unless you just want a Cyclone that has 2 people and you want to be prepared for mapping and more scanning gameplay. One that is actually useful is the TR. Has seats for 2 people, plus a gunner in the back, so you can transport 3 people into battle, and you have a size 1 minigun up top to provide a little bit of anti-infantry fire support. I would recommend picking, this is a ground vehicle that, if you have a ship that can carry it, and most ground vehicles, most spaceships that can carry vehicles can carry the Cyclone TR. So you're talking about for instance, I know the smallest that can carry it is the Nomad. The Consolidated Outland Nomad can carry this. I know that, and I'm moving up, the Constellation series can carry this. So a lot of different ships can carry one of these. So definitely a recommended buy if you were looking for a ground vehicle that can carry more than one person. AA wouldn't. It has missile racks, and again, my rant about missiles. You're at the mercy of the missile gods if they will hit, or if they'll be broken or working in that patch. And that is its only armament, so you're kind of at a loss if the missiles don't work. Otherwise, it's an option if you really believe it, if you really have hope for the missiles working. MT is an interesting choice. MT, again, 2 pilot and co-pilot, plus a turret operator. And this is... And people have rightly dinged this for basically being a knock-on because you have a knockoff because you have the AA and the TR combined into this effectively one platform. But it is a different loadout. 4 missiles up top, and it has a small, I'm going to call it is technically a ballistic cannon. I mean, in actual, like, real-life terms, it'd be an autocannon. So you have a size 1 cannon up top with 4 missiles, and this is a really interesting vehicle in my mind, because you can use the cannon a bit more effectively against ship targets, as well as you can use it more effectively against possibly even like other armored vehicles. I believe the cannons in Star Citizen shoot what's effectively high explosive, so you can use this to engage enemy infantry just as effectively as you can with a Gatling. So in general, the MT is cool, but you don't necessarily. But it is a little bit more money on the store page, so, and plus that little bit of those missile racks do actually give it a little bit more height, so it does have some clearance problems with other ships. So if you're deciding between a TR or an MT, definitely rent them here today, and then try to load them onto the ship that you want to use them in, and see if that little bit of extra clearance matters or not. Other than that, TR, MT are my recommended picks here. You don't have to go big with the MT with the extra missile racks and the cannon. The TR works just fine. And I do believe that there is there are 2 other variants. There's a base Cyclone, more or less, which has a little bit of cargo space in the back, which can be useful if you get like the 1 SCU cargo boxes that are found in the cargo decks, loaded in the back of that. Then you can use it to transport loot that you found at a crash site or some other place. And there's also a racing variant of the Cyclone, but that's obviously not very much. That's not very well themed to Invictus, so that's not located here at the show floor today. Tumbril's other offering that you can buy is the Nova Tonk, and as you can see, this is a big boy, and is very much a main battle tank in the line of Star Citizen world. Very powerful, but very large, and like I mentioned before, with the Anvil platform, with the Ballista, Centurion, and Spartan, you basically, if you buy the ship, you are more or less at the moment locked into buying a C2 Hercules or something in that family, because those are the only ships that can really be able to transport these Tumbril tanks into battle, and in any sort of comfortable sense of the word. I honestly don't think that any other ship can transport these into battle other than a C2. Thankfully, all the if they do get damaged in the field, they actually do have all these exposed components, so you do have a fully functional component bay. You do require a gunner to man the main gun. You have a co-pilot here, as well as you have a driver. The secondary pilot, I believe, might have control over a secondary gun turret, as well as missiles. You can see here, you do actually have very limited visibility, and this is obviously makes sense because this is a tank. So you're gonna have fun with that. However, you're gonna definitely be reliant on other infantry to tell you where targets are, and that's very much a real-world concern with actual tanks, is that your visibility is, well, crap. And thankfully, you can also see it is a one-way piece of glass underneath there. You can't see any glass up here, which is pretty cool. And let's see here if we can use. We'll use F4. I don't know why I'm crawling. That is a cool shot of the Nova, which I'll take right now. Alright, there we go. F4. Alright, there we go. Climb up. You can see the main gun there. So, Tumbril Nova has I think it's either a size 5 or a size 5 ballistic gun. And then you have these two laser repeaters beside it that offer a bit of anti-infantry and anti-air fire support, as well as 8 missiles that you can also shoot at air targets to cover you from above. So the Tumbril Nova, unlike most other tanks of the modern era, can actually be somewhat effective in defending against air targets, but you're definitely going to want to, with this, at least have some fighter cover and have the Tumbril Nova support the fighter, rather than have the Tumbril Nova take on a space fighter one-on-one. I would also say with the Tumbril Nova, before we head off to our next ship, I would say you're definitely want to be very careful about buying it with the Tumbril Storm being a one-man tank. That's a bit more easier to transport into battle. Logistically speaking, you're going to be better off as a single or a solo player picking up the Tumbril Storm, or even if you want to be a player in a multiplayer group who's a relatively small group, getting the Storm would be more effective than getting the Tunk. The Tumbril Nova, which is effectively known as the Tunk, that is. Alright, so we're going to go... We did exit by the Scorpius, but the other ships for today are also in that direction, so we're going to start heading this way. And actually, we're going to end up with another Scorpius. Scorpius Antares is the Scorpius Heavy Fighter by RSI. The difference between the Scorpius Antares and the Scorpion over there is that the Scorpion Antares, the pilot only has control of 4 guns and the 8 missiles, but that's all he has control over, and that's all the ship comes with, because the secondary pilot is, as he sits back there, in control of this QED device back here. So, this QED EMP device back up there is the sole purpose that the secondary pilot, or the co-pilot, actually controls. It's his sole purpose in life is to control it, trigger it, fire it. As such, it's kind of a waste of a ship, I believe, unless, again, this is another one of those ships where you have to have a second player to make the full use of the ship, but unfortunately that second player only has one role, and that's his entire gameplay, is just literally to sit and wait for the right moment to shoot off the EMP and QAD. So definitely you're going to have trouble finding a person willing to just do that right now in game. Now maybe once I believe ship engineering comes online and you're going to have more finer control of the ship systems and the MFDs to actually really make that gameplay viable, you could probably easily set up the rear seat pilot to set up systems management, and then have the front seat pilot manage just weapons, and that could be a really effective 2-man team. We'll get to the main Scorpius when we loop around there. Moving on, we have a ship that I can actually highly recommend for starter players, and that's the Aurora LN, which stands for Aurora Legionnaire. Now, the cool thing about the Legionnaire, as opposed to the base Aurora, is that you have 2 nose-mounted guns here, but you also have the hard points for 2 wing-mounted guns, so you have a total of 4 guns, as well as an improved missile rack, so you can carry double the missile capacity. And inside, it's your base standard Aurora. We don't need to really go in, because you just literally go in, turn around, and head out, but we'll do it anyways. Yep, there we go. You have your standard Aurora bed, and you have your standard Aurora cockpit. So nothing to write home about. Obviously, the Aurora series actually has pretty good visibility all around. It's not as good as the Mustang series, but it is pretty good visibility all around. And if you are looking to get into the combat side of Star Citizen gameplay, but you're starting off with a starter ship, you can easily buy a base Aurora package and then upgrade your package with a CCU into a RSI Aurora Legionnaire, and you'll actually have a much more combat-capable starter ship from the beginning. And it's definitely something that I would recommend for any of the starter ships. If there's a variant of the starter ship that really speaks to you, and it's only a small, and it's a relatively cheap upgrade to go to that enhanced variant, so to speak. Never a bad idea to do that off the bat if you really know you're going to love the gameplay, just because that way you're a bit more capable and you have a bit more punch for combat, for instance, or you have a bit more cargo for shipping, for cargo gameplay. Gives you a little bit more starting leverage to begin your career in Star Citizen. Now, speaking of ship packages, I should mention that there actually is ship packages for these series of ships up here that you can buy as a player, namely the Andromeda. Get out of that. So the Andromeda is sort of an interesting choice here for a Star Citizen Invictus Flight Week show floor, because it's not really a military ship, but it's a military adjacent ship. The Andromeda series, the Andromeda itself, but the Constellation series, is very much a kind of a tough freighter mixed with a decent amount of guns in order to defend itself. Plus, you have a bit of cargo space in the middle. So, power is off, unfortunately. So it's a little bit dark in here, but the other reason that the Constellation series is interesting is because it comes with because the Constellation series comes with its own snub fighter, the P-52 Merlin. This actually comes with your purchase with the Constellation series. So if you want a Merlin, so you get the free Merlin snub fighter with every Constellation except the Taurus, which replaces this room back here with more cargo. And in addition to that, I believe if you get the Phoenix, you get the upgraded Merlin, which is the Archimedes. So you do have so the Constellation does also have a snub fighter to help protect it and make it a bit more of a tanky / defensible freighter in those really more dangerous areas of the world. So that's why the Constellation series is here at Invictus. It's very much if you're gonna go into some place that has a lot of trouble, you definitely have a decent amount of firepower to help you get out of that trouble. Plus, this cargo bay down here. Nope, didn't mean to go down there. This cargo bay down here can carry a decent number of the ground units found in Star Citizen. It can easily carry the smaller Dragonfly and Nox bikes. It can carry the quad, the Consolidated Outland's hover quad. It can carry I can obviously carry the RSI's the RSI Ursa rover, as well as their new Lynx rover, and it can also carry Tumbril Cyclones. You have your 4 crew member beds up here. You have your table up there, and let's see here if I can find there it is in the darkness. If I stand here, see a little bit better the inside here. It is unusually dark. I'm not quite sure why. Probably just didn't set it up right, but oh well. As you can see, decent visibility all around for the cockpit. There is a lower and an upper turret gunner, and between the 2 turret gunners, the pilot and then the Merlin pilot, that's plenty of firepower between all 4 combat stations to deal with most threats that you will be facing in the verse. Constellation Taurus here. This is the ship that almost made me get the. I was gonna get the Anvil Spartan, because this is where I say things can get a little tricky with some of the ground vehicles, and you have to be careful. The Taurus does actually have quite a lot of space, and I love it for cargo running, because you have all this extra space in here for putting cargo in. Plus a little bit of extra space in the back there for more cargo. However, keep in mind that this is deceptively large and big. certain ships, certain vehicles like the Tumbril Nova tank and the Anvil Spartan APC, while they look like they'll be able to fit in this larger hold, they are unable to. So keep that in mind. Taurus is good for carrying a lot of ground vehicles, though. So if you need to carry more than one ground vehicle, you can easily load them up in here. If you're doing massive cargo runs, plenty of cargo space for that. It's also, for a Constellation series, it is also cheaper than your base Andromeda or other ships. So there is also that to go over. And really, highly recommend, you can even fly the ship solo. It's a ship that, obviously, if you have a friend and they're online, team up with them with this ship. You can get a lot more fun and a lot more versatility and also a lot more protection with a second player. But you can, this is a ship that is on the upper end of being able to solo fly. I should also mention the Taurus is, again, the ship that does not have the P-52 Merlin in the back, nor does it actually have a second turret that's on the lower half. Its only defensive turret is on the top half of the Taurus. This ship with the Constellation variant with the rounded nose is the Aquila, and that's basically the exploration gameplay. That's the exploration version. In all other aspects, it is basically effectively the Andromeda, except I believe one of its turrets is more of a recon turret. It has like a bunch of sensors on it. And this is the luxury cruiser variant, the RSI Constellation Phoenix. And as we will hop in here, you can see that they actually took the cargo bay and basically effectively nerfed it. The RSI links will drive into here, and then it'll go up, and you'll be able to access the main accoutrements of the ship from there, from that little access ladder in there. But I want to show the insides off of this ship, because if you watch our CIG's Inside Star Citizen, you will find the inside of this ship very familiar. There we go. Yep. There we go. So there's the RSI Phoenix. You have two little crew bunks off on either. You have two bunks off on either side for passengers. You have a whole bunch of these chairs laying around here, as well as a nice view off to the side. And if this bar looks very familiar, you are not mistaken. This is indeed the bar that they used for inspiration to create the basically the new Inside Star Citizen / Around the Verse / whatever CIG shows are for their in-person shows. This is the inspiration for the bar section of the new set, the only constant. And you can see that they kind of took inspiration from here with the big window for like their interview area, for that section of the set. Fish tanks, jacuzzi, all these other things. You have a bed with frosting that's not super it's a little bit too transparent for my liking. And we just exited the ship. Honestly, that's for the best, because that's all there really is to that ship, other than the Archimedes docked in the back. Why is this basically luxury liner at Invictus? I have no idea. The only thing I can think of is this is where the general staff and the staff officers, they have a couple of these ships laying around and they go cruising around the verse and going from staff meeting to staff meeting, and general whining and dining with other political officials and all that fun shit. So yeah, staff officers bride as compared to the workhorse of the UE, right? Two ships down right there on the Taurus. So this ship here is the RSI Mantis. Mantis is an interesting dedicated ship, because this is the dedicated. There we go, got one up. This is a dedicated quantum interdiction ship Its whole only purpose is basically to snare other ships in a quantum interdiction field, where you have other players actually engage them and fight them. Now, yes, you can technically solo operate this ship, but the whole point of this ship is to coordinate with other ships to actually engage targets and pull people out of quantum. So, interesting ship, a single-player ship, but it's really meant for multi-person gameplay. Nothing really too interesting in there. There's like a should mention there's a bed, there's a toilet, and there's like a coffee maker, and that's all there really is inside the Mantis. Circling to the middle now, because we're kind of making a weird S shape, because this is RSI has everything all over this floor here. We have the Lynx, which is the luxury variant there, and then we have the Ursa beside it. So as you can see, the Lynx is the fancy-dancy, shiny version. With all the components there. Fancy wine bucket there. Gun rack. Pilot seat up there. All like the gold. I do like the gold tinted visor up above, and then in the back. No, not in the back. Again, more fancy shelving for like your wine bottles. You have your 2 comfy seats in the back. Your little display right there. Plus, you have these really cool looking side view windows, and you have this really cool back view window. So this is very much a luxury touring ship. Now, they did kind of they did kind of explain that, oh, this is a rover made in honor of the UE service. Yeah, I would like I have a feeling that RSI between the Phoenix, but between the Constellation Phoenix and the RSI Lynx, these are definitely vehicles made for the general staff. So your staff officers, they use this to like ride around bases and kind of like do their meetings in luxury from the common folk, the common soldier. So would not be surprised if that was the actual case. For more your standard issue actual military use vehicle, you have the Ursa Rover. As you can see, much more Spartan, much more utilitarian. You have 4 seats in the back for 4 infantrymen, and you have all your component stuff here, as well as your 2 pilot and co-pilot up front. Again, good visibility like with the Lynx. Plus, also I should mention that the Lynx and the Ursa also have a twin turret that is mounted on a rail that can be operated and used to provide a little bit of firepower. It's not the most powerful fighting vehicle that you have in verse, but it's enough to defend yourself and at least buy time for aid to come. And if you're the Ursa is definitely a really cool vehicle if you have a small little org. If you have a small little org, you can use it to get around, but like I said before, some of the other ground vehicles, all these ground vehicles should be relatively cheap to get in game, so don't feel purchased to buy them unless you already have a couple of other ships, and you find yourself buying a Ursa Rover all the time in the verse anyways, and you have a little bit of extra money you want to throw CIG's way. But between the two, I would pick the Ursa because it's a little more utilitarian. Lynx is cool, but unless you're into that luxury lifestyle as a citizen, it's a little too fancy. Now, we started RSI with the Scorpion Antares. Let's go to a sort of fan favorite with the Plane Scorpius. The Plane Scorpius has, again, a pilot and co-pilot. Pilot mans all the missiles, and I did say there were 8 on the other one. I didn't realize there was also 8 on top. So this he has 16 missiles, plus he has his 4 wing-mounted guns. And then the co-pilot has his own turret that can either be slung on the top there, or can, if he so chooses, traverse this rail mechanism and actually be at the very bottom. And like the Scorpius Antares and the Anvil Hurricane, This is a ship that, yes, you can fly it solo, but you're not unlocking its full potential unless you have another player with you. Now, the other player is a turret gunner, so unlike with the Antares where he just mans a QE, basically a quantum interdiction device, as well as EMP, I do believe this is a bit more functional in that he actually has guns he can man and shoot and be a little bit more engaged in the actual fight with. Oh wait, Antares only has EMP. That's how uninterested, I'll be honest, that's how uninterested I am in the Scorpius Antares, is that I don't even remember if it's an EMP or QED. Some ships have both, some ships have only one. Antares is a EMP only, I believe. Whereas the Scorpius here replaces that EMP with a turret. So, a bit more useful with the turret, but again, you really should make sure that you have someone you can play with reliably with the Scorpius, because otherwise, as a single solo player, you're going to struggle manning this and using the Scorpius to its fullest potential otherwise. And with that, that is RSI here at the show floor. And thankfully, we only have one smaller room to cover, and then that's it for all of basically Invictus and the show floor. And if you're wondering, wow, Invictus has been kind of sort of lacking in the ships. I thought Star Citizen had way more ships. Well, that's because, quite frankly, a lot of the ships in-game here are... there's actually quite a lot of non-combat ships in-game. They could definitely use more for some professions, but overall, the number of ships that they could have technically here is actually quite big. So we're going to start over... Oh, where should we start? We'll start with my one of my favorite ship manufacturers here, Consolidated Outland. Consolidated Outland, not to be outdone by RSI's Aurora Legionnaire, actually have developed the Consolidated Outland Mustang Delta. The Mustang Delta is the combat-focused variant of the Mustang, of the base Mustang Alpha series. And like the base Mustang Alpha series, it has a chin-mounted turret with this case laser cannons, as well as wing-mounted laser repeaters. And the Delta series has basically a armor type. Its armor is supposed to reduce its signature as compared to a base Mustang series, so it has lower signature armor. Plus, it has these rocket pods. Now, the rocket pods have kind of varied in usefulness throughout Star Citizen history, and it seems like for whatever reason, CIG really hasn't touched rocket pods as a weapon or a game mechanic. So they're somewhat dubious right now, I believe, but they can be used in a pinch. Plus, they actually do provide a decent amount of firepower when they do hit. So it's definitely a good option for a combat pilot. It's definitely not a bad option for a combat pilot, particularly if you like your Mustang Alpha and you want to upgrade to a combat variant. Now, upgrading from a Mustang Alpha to a Mustang Delta, you will lose the cargo space that the Mustang Alpha has. So keep that in mind, that if you're going with a Mustang Delta, you are going to be very much focused only on combat. But yeah, this display in here in the middle, by the way, segments in the several for your MFDs and all that are fun stuff here. And as you can see, the Mustang series has basically uninterrupted view all around. So this is one of my favorite ships in the verse. If I want to do a little bit of sightseeing, take something that has a little bit more firepower and also has quite good visibility all around. So I would recommend the Mustang Delta as an upgrade option for your base Mustang. Also keep in mind that the Mustang Delta, I believe, is generally only available at Invictus and IAE. Unlike I believe the Aurora Legionnaire is available year-round. The Mustang Delta is not available year-round, so keep that in mind. I should also mention, between the Legionnaire and the Mustang Delta, while the Aurora Legionnaire does have missiles, the Mustang series as a whole is more maneuverable, and as such, between the extra guns, well, between the better, I believe the Mustang Delta has a bit more of a better, interesting gun loadout. It's not just all repeaters. Plus the fact that it has rocket pods, which is a very unique weapon. Plus the fact that it's more maneuverable. I believe that between the Aurora Legionnaire and the Mustang Delta, for a pure combat ship, the Mustang Delta does beat out the the Aurora Legionnaire. Now, Aurora Legionnaire does have that little bit of extra cargo room and a bed, so keep that in mind that the Aurora Legionnaire is not a bad choice if you're looking for a ship that is combat capable, but also has a bed. And a little bit of cargo, because it always comes in handy in a pinch. Another ship that is relatively cheap, that has a little bit of cargo room, is this ship here. This is the Origin 325A. Has 2 laser cannons on either side, so it definitely has less guns than the Mustang Delta. It does have 4 missiles though, which is pretty unique, and it does have a massive big gun in the front. So 3 guns, not 2. It has 3 guns. However, the gun up front is a much larger size than the Mustang Deltas. So you do have that have advantage with the size 4 Gatling up here. So 3 guns and 4 missiles. So a pretty decent combat loadout, especially with, like I said, the larger gun up front. You also have with the Origin 325A guess it's not going to let me. There we go. Servers are... I get the feeling the servers are going to start struggling soon with you guys' delayed interactions like that. But you have decent visibility in the cockpit all around here. Plus you have bed, and a little bit of a kitchen, and a cooler, and a little bit of a gun rack in the back, and... Oh. There we go. And you have a toilet. Also, the 300 series is interesting because you can actually customize the 300 series on the RSI web store, or at least you used to be able to. It's been a very long time since I customized my 315p Explorer, so unfortunately I do not know if that is still something you can do in-game or not. But I do know at the very least that was at least an option at one time, that you can actually go onto the RSI's webpage and customize your 300 series ship with like a rice, basically it's like a rice cooker, an alarm clock. You can get like fancier trim on the inside. You can get a fancy paint job. You can actually go. So I saw like something random, like it went like scooshing by on the screen, and then you can also get a fancier chair. So you can really dole up your 300 series ship with some customizable options, which are not normally available on other ships. I do believe that was sort of a test bed, though. I don't think that's coming to other ships, sadly. So it is what it is. Now that's sort of like the second tier starter ship for Origin is the 300 series. If you're looking for a more basic version of an Origin ship, you have the Origin 125A, and these have the 100 series for Origin has always been kind of sort of odd duck. I don't normally see them too often. They do have this air system, which is supposed to actually be a very effective refinery for your filling up your quantum and your hydrogen fuel tanks. So that is something that is supposed to be a feature of this ship, is that it's supposed to have very good air intake systems for filling up hydrogen at the very least. It has 2 guns for the 125A, but I do believe it's rear access, rear hatch basically here on the back. If it can come down, which I guess it's not going to here. This rear hatch back here, instead of extra cargo space, actually is focused on carrying extra missiles. So for a starter ship, you have 2 guns and a decent number of missiles in the back. Plus, for a starter ship, you have this 2 SCU nook back here that you can crawl into. And yes, you can technically take someone here in the nook, and they can just stay back there in that nook. But really, that's meant for mission boxes. So if you need to deliver or pick up 1 or 2 boxes, you can use that for box delivery missions back there. Then you have this bed here that you can log out from, and then you have pretty good visibility cockpit all around. And really, this is a interesting choice for a starter ship. I do believe it's not as pricey as a Mustang Delta. It might be comparable to the Aurora Legionnaire. You'll have to see what the what the prices are on the webpage. But it's definitely an interesting ship. It's definitely an option. I will say, however, I don't normally see 100 series ships in the verse, so it is something you'll have to consider when you pick buying it. The price versus capability of this starter ship versus things like, again, like the Mustang Delta back there or the 300 series, if it's worth the extra money to upgrade that ship. I'm wondering if that was the person I saw kind of like run by when I was in the cockpit of 300. And lastly, for this mixed manufacturer day, we have ARGO. This is kind of a bit of a meme ship, the ARGO MPUV. The best way to describe the ARGO MPUV is very much sort of like a mini tugboat or a lifeboat, or a little bit of like a it's very much a shuttlecraft in like a larger ship. Its whole point is basically to be it doesn't have a quantum drive, and really its only purpose is to be basically either as part of a larger craft, as a snub, basically freighter, or you dock this at a station and you use this to like basically pick up either personnel pods, like escape pods like this, or you can use it to carry a little bit of a cargo pod, and you can use it basically to go in between areas where a larger ship like a Idris would be parked at, and a station, or onto the surface. So very much not intended for use unless you can dock this with a larger ship. And usually by a larger ship, I mean something along the lines of a, not even like a C2 Hercules. I'm talking more along the lines of a like an Idris. Maybe you could use this for like a Nautilus or a Perseus or a Polaris. A ship of that size where you don't really want to dock it, or you really can't land it on the ground. You instead have this in the basically the cargo bay or the hangar bay, and then you would use this to actually get to the ground or maneuver around tight spots, or even take this to an actual station. The cargo variant basically has a square little cargo box in the back that has enough space for some, I think, 2 or 3 SCU plus a chair for a person to ride in. The personnel variant here, this is more or less a escape pod that they bolted onto the back of here, and there's room for 8 people to ride out to and from. It's not really meant as a drop ship in so much as it's meant to just get people from point A to point B, or in reality, the ARGO MPV would just be a base MPV with nothing here, and they would come across like a ship that just exploded and they have some lifeboats nearby. You would basically have this be empty, and then you would pick up basically what the lifeboats are, which are these things here, dock them to the MPUV, and then the MPUV would take them to safety. So very much a utility ship, only really meant to be used with a larger ship, but they can be fun to fly around in verse if you just want to kick around in one in the middle of nowhere. And that's really it for Invictus launch week for the quote-unquote official ceremonies. This will be ending on Friday, and on Saturday, Drake Interplanetary will come along with DefenseCon. DefenseCon will not be held here. It will be held at the Riker Memorial Spaceport. So head to the spaceport for DefenseCon. And that is where you will find me on Saturday, where I will cover DefenseCon, and then I'll probably come back here, because usually after DefenseCon, there's sort of a final finale, where they'll have random ships here on the floor, They'll have stuff on them down below, all sorts of fun like that. So, until next time, this is Loco S, signing out from Star Citizen, and see you around.